The metal taste in my mouth intensified as my father's words cut through the silence of our living room. "Layla gets the chair. She's our guest," he said, not even looking at me as he gestured for his girlfriend's daughter to take my seat. It was the custom recliner I'd received for my birthday last year. I stood frozen, my fingers still gripping the armrest of my chair. Seconds earlier, I'd won the childish race Layla had initiated, reaching the chair first after we returned from the kitchen with snacks. Now my victory meant nothing. My father's eyes were fixed on Robin, his girlfriend of barely a year, seeking her approval as she stretched across our couch. Layla smirked as she settled into my chair, the smugness on her 12-year-old face making my skin burn. "My name is Olivia, I'm 15, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes walking away is the most powerful revenge." The chair incident wasn't the first time. For months I'd been watching as my father systematically chose Robin and Layla over me in every situation. They technically had their own apartment, but somehow were always at our house, my house, the one where I split time with my dad after my parents' divorce. The betrayals had started small. Robin would accidentally use my bathroom products. Layla would borrow my books without asking. But things escalated quickly. I still remember the shock of waking up one night to find Layla in my bed. I'd kicked her out immediately, only to be lectured the next morning about how I needed to share, because I had a full-size bed while Layla was sleeping on the pull-out couch her mother had brought. My father's expression as he scolded me was becoming all too familiar, stern, but with that pleading look that said, "Please don't make this difficult for me." Each time I visited another piece of my space, my belongings or my time with my father was sacrificed at the altar of his new relationship, but it was the blanket that broke me. My mother had surprised me with it after a particularly difficult week at school, a soft plush throw with my favorite hockey team's logo emblazoned across it. Something so simple shouldn't have meant so much, but it did. It represented the small ways my mother noticed me, even when I didn't say anything. I'd brought it to my dad's house, excited to use it during our movie night, something we'd done together since I was little. I'd wrapped myself in it while waiting for him to join me, but he wasn't alone when he came to the living room. Robin and Layla trailed behind him, Robin already discussing what movie they should watch. "Oh, is that new?" Robin asked, eyeing my blanket. Before I could answer, Layla was already reaching for it. "Cool. I love this team too." I pulled it closer. "My mom just got it for me." My father's face tightened. "Olivia, you need to share. It's not fair that you got something new and Layla didn't." "But it's mine," I said, hating how childish I sounded. "Don't be selfish," he responded, his voice carrying that edge that meant the discussion was over. I handed over half the blanket, watching as Layla spread it across her lap, covering more of herself than she left for me. Throughout the movie, she kept pulling it further onto her side until I was left with just a corner. My father noticed, but said nothing. That became the pattern. Everything I owned was communal property, but Layla's belongings were sacrosanct. One afternoon, she was reading one of my favorite books, the signed copy my grandmother had given me before she passed away. Robin and my dad got into an argument, and suddenly they were leaving. Layla tried to take my book with her. "No," I said firmly. "That's special to me. You can finish it next time." My father erupted. "Just let her take it. Why do you have to make everything difficult?" They eventually made up that night, so Layla returned the book, but the message was clear. My belongings, my boundaries, and my feelings were negotiable. The final betrayal came on a day I'd been looking forward to for weeks. My father and I had planned our annual ice fishing trip, a tradition we'd maintained since I was 7. It was one of the few times I felt connected to him, standing on the frozen lake in comfortable silence, just the two of us against the cold. When I arrived at his house that morning, bundled in my warmest clothes and vibrating with excitement, I found Robin and Layla in the kitchen, also dressed for cold weather. "Ready for our adventure?" Robin asked cheerfully. I looked at my father, confusion evident on my face. He avoided my eyes. "Dad?" I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. I thought this was our thing. He sighed that way adults do when they think you're being difficult. Sometimes we need to compromise, Olivia. Robin and Layla wanted to experience it too. The entire trip was ruined. Robin complained about the cold every 5 minutes. Layla kept saying the fish were gross and asking when we could leave. After less than 2 hours compared to our usual 6-hour expeditions, my father packed everything up and announced we were heading home. "Sometimes you have to compromise," he repeated as we drove back, as if that explained everything. I sat in silence watching the snowy landscape blur past the window, realizing that compromise in my father's vocabulary meant I was the only one expected to give anything up. When I got home, my mother noticed my mood immediately. After I explained what happened, anger flashed across her face. She called my father, and I could hear their heated exchange from my bedroom. Later, he called me, repeating his line about compromise and adding that I needed to adjust to not being an only child anymore. That night, I made my decision. I was supposed to go back to his house in 3 days, but what was the point? I never spent time with just him anymore. Every visit was the Robin and Layla show, with my father as their eager audience and me as the inconvenient extra. When I told my mother I didn't want to go, she studied my face carefully. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "It's your choice," she said simply. My father didn't take it well. He called, insisting I was just used to being spoiled and that I couldn't run away whenever there was a problem. His family started calling too. Aunts and uncles suddenly concerned about family bonds they'd never seemed to care about before. Then came his final play. He texted me a photo of my Nintendo Switch, which I'd left at his house. "You'll get this back when you come over to talk things out," he wrote. The Switch I'd saved up for months to buy myself. That's when I realized my father wasn't interested in understanding me. He wanted compliance. The father who had taught me to stand up for myself was now angry that I was doing exactly that. I gathered my courage and called him. When he answered, his voice was smug, probably thinking his hostage negotiation with my Switch had worked. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told him, keeping my voice steady. "I'm glad to hear that," he replied. "You're right. I can't run away from problems," I continued. "That's why I'm addressing this one directly. I'm not coming over until you understand that forcing me to give up everything that matters to me isn't compromise. It's not my job to make Layla happy at my own expense." There was silence on the other end. "As for my Switch," I added, "you can keep it or return it. Either way, I've learned something valuable about what matters more to you." I hung up before he could respond. That was 3 weeks ago. My aunts and uncles still call sometimes, telling me I'm being difficult, that I should give my dad another chance. My mother offered to take me to pick up my belongings, and we did. I packed everything that mattered to me while my father watched in silence. He returned my Switch the next day, leaving it on our porch without a note. Last week, he texted asking if we could talk, just the two of us at a cafe halfway between our houses. I haven't responded yet. Not because I don't want to rebuild our relationship, but because, for the first time, I'm setting the terms. Maybe that's the thing about family betrayals. The revenge isn't some elaborate scheme or public humiliation. It's standing in your truth and refusing to participate in your own erasure. It's realizing that walking away doesn't mean giving up. Sometimes it means recognizing your own worth when others won't. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, know this. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. The most powerful statement isn't always what you say. It's what you refuse to accept. The silverware rattled against bone china as my father's fist crashed onto the dining table. Wine sloshed from glasses, and the birthday candles flickered wildly, casting monstrous shadows across the walls. "You're selfish, Rebecca," he roared, spittle flying from his lips. "Your sister is better than you in every possible way." Time seemed to freeze. My cousin Olivia's fork hung suspended between her plate and mouth. My Aunt Patricia's hand covered her lips, stifling a gasp. My mother, Eleanor's eyes darted frantically between us, silently pleading for peace. And there was Vanessa, my younger sister, not even trying to hide her triumphant smirk as she watched our father tear me apart on what was supposed to be my mother's special night. I didn't cry, I didn't shout back. Instead, I felt an icy calm wash over me, a strange clarity cutting through 27 years of emotional manipulation. I laughed, a sharp, cold sound that silenced the room. "Perfect," I said, meeting my father's glare. "Then I won't be paying her rent anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face flushed crimson, veins bulging at his temples as he shoved his chair back with such force it toppled over. "Get out!" he bellowed, pointing to the door like I was a stranger who had invaded his home. "Get out!" My name is Rebecca. I'm 27 and a financial analyst. This is the story of how I reclaimed not just my money, but my self-worth after years of being treated like my family's ATM. When I'd arrived at my parents' suburban home earlier that evening, I'd been determined to make the night special for my mother. Eleanor deserved one evening where she wasn't playing peacekeeper, one night to bask in attention rather than deflect tension. The aroma of her signature rosemary chicken filled the air, a scent that once meant home, but now just twisted my stomach with anxiety. Still, I'd plastered on a smile, clutching the small gift box containing the pearl earrings she'd admired months ago, but would never buy for herself. "Becca," she'd whispered at the door, enfolding me in a hug that smelled of lavender hand cream and worry. "I'm so glad you came." For 15 blissful minutes, everything seemed normal. The table gleamed under candlelight, crystal glasses catching and fracturing the light. My relatives chatted amicably. My mother glowed as she accepted small gifts and warm wishes. But peace in our family was always temporary, a visitor that never stayed long enough. As we began to eat, my father William did what he always did, redirected all attention to Vanessa. His voice swelled with pride as he described her college achievements. "She's thriving," he boasted, gesturing with his fork like a conductor's baton. "Straight A's while juggling work, perfect in every way." I forced a smile and concentrated on cutting my chicken into unnecessarily precise pieces. Vanessa lowered her eyes in mock humility, but I caught the corner of her mouth twitching upward. Everyone else sat in uncomfortable silence, allowing my father to dominate the conversation like his words were gospel. My mother glanced at me apologetically, but that soft look couldn't erase the sting. I sipped my wine, trying to drown out his endless praise. "She's got potential," he continued. "She'll be someone great." Everything a father could want. It wasn't Vanessa I resented. It was my invisibility beside her. Every family gathering, regardless of whose celebration it was supposed to be, inevitably became the Vanessa show, even on Mom's birthday. I swallowed hard, determined not to ruin the night, but then my father turned his sharp, expectant gaze on me. "Rebecca," he said, his tone dripping with accusation, "are you helping your sister enough?" My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Helping her enough. I had been paying her entire rent for 8 months, covering groceries, her phone bill, even sending extra money when she overspent. Before I could respond, my father turned to Vanessa like a prosecutor prompting his star witness. "Does she help you?" he pressed. Vanessa tilted her head, pausing just long enough to ensure all eyes were on her. Then she smiled, saccharine sweet, but I could see the calculation behind her eyes. "She does," she admitted carefully, "but there's something I've been meaning to ask." My stomach knotted instantly. I already knew what was coming. My father leaned forward eagerly as though she were about to request a crown. "Go on, Vanessa." Her gaze locked with mine, her voice dripping with rehearsed innocence. "I need a car, Becca. It would make school and work so much easier." The room went silent. Forks clinked softly against plates as everyone turned to stare at me. The weight of their expectation pressed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. "A car?" I repeated, setting down my fork with deliberate calm. She nodded eagerly. "Something reliable, just to keep up with everything." I turned to my father, disbelief etched across my face. "If she needs a car, why don't you buy it?" The air thickened instantly. My father's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "You mean to tell me you can't do this one thing for your sister?" he hissed. My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice steady. "I'm already paying her rent. If she wants a car, that's her responsibility. Or yours." That's when he snapped, his voice rising with each word. Vanessa has potential. She's going places, and she needs support. I've poured everything into her future because she deserves it. And you can't even do this one thing. The table sank into uncomfortable silence. My cousins stared at their plates, shifting uncomfortably. My aunts exchanged worried glances. My mother's knuckles whitened around her napkin. And then my father delivered the final blow. She's better than you, Rebecca. Always has been, always will be. That's when I laughed, that cold, unfamiliar sound, and told him I wouldn't be paying Vanessa's rent anymore. That's when the chair scraped back and he ordered me out of his house. That's when I finally saw the truth. After his outburst, I didn't storm out dramatically. Instead, I walked calmly upstairs to my old bedroom, the shrine to my teenage years preserved in amber since I'd moved out. I shut the door against the chaos of voices spilling from below. My mother pleading with my father to calm down, my father's continued ranting, and most telling of all, Vanessa's silence. I sat on the edge of my childhood bed, anger burning through me like acid. This wasn't new. My father had belittled me before, had always elevated Vanessa at my expense. But doing it on my mother's birthday in front of our entire family? That was the final insult. I wasn't going to beg for respect anymore. I wasn't going to remain their silent ATM, their scapegoat, their afterthought. Downstairs, strained conversation resumed. Plates clinked and glasses knocked together as if nothing had just exploded. That was my family's specialty. Bury the damage, polish the surface, let Vanessa remain in the spotlight. But I was finished playing their game. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and logged into my banking app. There it was. The joint account my father had pressured me to open years ago, calling it a family safety net. In reality, it had become Vanessa's lifeline, the place I deposited substantial portions of my paychecks to cover her rent, groceries, and endless wants. The balance made my stomach clench. Where there should have been thousands, less than $200 remained. I scrolled through the transaction history, each line entry like a knife in my back. Withdrawals marked simply cash, transfers labeled tuition, bills I'd never authorized. Not just Vanessa, my father had been helping himself too. My own father had been systematically bleeding me dry, then having the audacity to call me selfish. The anger that rose wasn't hot and chaotic. It was ice cold and laser focused. In 3 decisive taps, I transferred the remaining funds to my personal account and closed the joint account permanently. Something uncoiled in my chest as the confirmation appeared. The invisible chain was broken. Vanessa's next rent payment? Not my problem anymore. Let William play savior now. By sunrise, the fallout hit like a tsunami. My phone buzzed relentlessly, Vanessa's name flashing first. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Rebecca, what the hell?" she shrieked, voice cracking with panic. "You drained the account." "I can't pay my rent now." I leaned back against my headboard, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "Dad says you're better than me in every way. Prove it. Figure it out." "You're ruining my life," she screamed. "No," I replied evenly. "You and Dad did that." I ended the call, her outrage still buzzing in my ear. 20 minutes later came a soft knock at my apartment door. My mother stood there wrapped in her faded robe, her face lined with exhaustion. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I stepped aside and she sank onto my sofa, rubbing her temples. "Your father didn't mean it last night," she whispered. "He just gets passionate when it comes to Vanessa." I laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. "Passionate?" He humiliated me in front of everyone. He told me to get out of the house. Her shoulders slumped. "You know how he is." "Just fix this, Rebecca, for the family." "Fix what?" I snapped. "I've been paying Vanessa's bills for years while he treats me like garbage. I'm done." Her eyes widened, panic flickering across her face. "Rebecca, don't do anything rash." I didn't respond. She left quietly, the soft click of my door sealing me back in silence. The rest of the day brought a barrage of increasingly desperate messages from Vanessa. "Becca, I need the rent money. What's wrong with you? Answer me." I finally typed back, "Ask Dad. He says you're better than me, so he's got you." Then I muted her number. By evening, it was my father's turn. His voice on the phone was clipped, barely containing his fury. "You closed the account." "It was my money," I replied flatly. "You and Vanessa have drained me long enough." "You're leaving your sister homeless." "She's better than me, remember? She'll survive." Silence. Then the line went dead. But I knew my father. This wasn't over. 2 mornings later, I drove to my parents' house to collect some personal documents I'd left there. As I pulled into the driveway, I froze. My old sedan, the first car I'd ever owned, bought at 17 with tips from my waitressing job, sat with a neon for sale sign slapped across the windshield. My first taste of independence reduced to a pawn in my father's game. I stormed inside. My mother nearly dropped the dish she was washing. "Where's Dad?" I demanded. Her eyes flickered nervously. "He's out." "Why?" I pointed toward the driveway. "He's selling my car." She wrung her hands. "You haven't driven it in years." He thought. "It's mine," I snapped. "Not his to touch." I marched out, ripped the sign off, and drove the car straight to my apartment complex. The engine rattled protectively, but to me it sounded like victory. Minutes later, my father called. His voice was smug, confident. "Changed your mind about the account?" "You don't get to sell what's mine," I said. He chuckled darkly. "You left it here. That makes it mine to deal with. You're done in this family, Rebecca." "Fine," I replied coldly. "Then let's see how you manage Vanessa without me." I hung up, rage simmering beneath my skin, resolve hardening like concrete. That night, I combed through years of joint account statements. The numbers confirmed everything. My father hadn't just helped Vanessa. He'd siphoned thousands for tuition payments, utility bills, even regular cash withdrawals for himself. I wasn't just their support system. I'd been their prey. The final betrayal came 3 days later. I opened my apartment door after work and stood frozen in the doorway. My place had been gutted. TV gone, laptop missing, clothes ransacked. Even my small collection of vintage watches vanished. No forced entry, no broken locks. Only 2 people had spare keys. My parents. My blood burned in my veins as I dialed my father's number with shaking hands. "Where's my stuff?" I demanded. He sounded almost amused. "What are you talking about?" "You robbed me. For Vanessa." "Family comes first," he said simply, not even bothering to deny it. "You'd understand if you weren't so selfish." I forced my voice steady, each word precise and deliberate. "You just made a mistake, Dad." Then I hung up. The next morning, I sat across from a lawyer, laying everything bare. Photos of my apartment before and after, receipts for the stolen items, bank records documenting years of financial abuse, text messages proving my father's admission to the theft. She tapped her pen thoughtfully. "This is clear theft. You can press charges. At minimum, we can threaten legal action. He'll fold." For the first time in years, I felt power shift back into my hands. That night, I called my father, phone set to record. "I talked to a lawyer today," I said calmly. "Return my things or I file criminal charges." He laughed, but it was strained. "You'd jail your own father?" "Try me," I replied. "I have your admission on tape." Silence stretched between us. Then his voice cracked. "Fine. I'll get the money." 3 days later, my account lit up with a notification. Every cent returned via wire transfer. No excuse, no apology, just compliance. I'd won, but I was done. I sold my apartment, accepted a job offer in another state, and packed what little I had left. My new place was small but quiet. No manipulative calls, no guilt trips, no financial hemorrhaging, just freedom. 6 months of blessed silence passed until my mother's number flashed on my phone again. "Rebecca, it's Vanessa," she said without preamble. "She's pregnant." The father left. "She has nothing. We need you." I leaned back in my chair, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "She's better than me, right? She'll figure it out." I hung up. Weeks later, Vanessa emailed me directly. "I'm sorry, Becca. Single motherhood is harder than I imagined. Dad's broke. Please help us." I marked the message as spam and closed my laptop. They had drained me financially, mocked me openly, stolen from me brazenly. Now they could learn how to survive without me. I exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in years. I wasn't Rebecca the wallet anymore. I wasn't the invisible daughter. I was Rebecca, free, untethered, and finally whole. So tell me, was I wrong to cut them off, to fight back? Or was this the only way I could reclaim my life? And if this story resonated with you, the next one will leave you speechless. Subscribe now so you don't miss it. Hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it too. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. The sizzle of steaks hitting the grill wasn't what made my skin prickle. It was my father's voice, cutting through the backyard chatter with deliberate precision. "Hey, Bianca," he called out, eyes glinting with the satisfaction of a predator who knows his prey is cornered. "You're old enough to pay rent or get out. This isn't a charity." Every conversation around us stuttered to a halt. My throat constricted as I felt dozens of eyes shift in my direction. Neighbors, family, friends, cousins, all suddenly witness to my humiliation. The potato salad bowl I was carrying grew impossibly heavy in my hands. What made it unbearable wasn't just the demand. It was the laughter that followed. My stepmother Erin's high-pitched giggle, my half-brother Flynn's smug chuckle as he popped open another beer. And worst of all, my father's satisfied smirk as he flipped a steak, spatula waving dismissively in my direction. My name is Bianca. I'm 24 and a paralegal saving for law school. This is the story of how I reclaimed my life by letting theirs fall apart. "You've been taking half my paycheck for years, Dad," I said, my voice steadier than the trembling in my fingertips would suggest. "I've been paying the bills." His face twisted into that exaggerated mock surprise I'd seen 1,000 times. "So? That's called life." He gestured broadly to the neighbors who were pretending not to listen. "If you don't like it, find somewhere else to live." Flynn snorted. "Good luck with that." The air felt electric, charged with something more dangerous than embarrassment. The neighbors' eyes darted between us like spectators at a tennis match, waiting for me to break, to cry, to retreat like I always had before. The scent of charred meat mingled with something sour, the taste of a decision crystallizing in my mouth. I stepped closer to my father, close enough to see the pores on his nose, the tiny burst blood vessels from years of drinking. "Fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper but somehow filling the sudden silence. "You want me gone? You'll get your wish." He laughed, the sound harsh and dismissive. "Yeah? And where are you going to go? Back to that falling-apart apartment complex? You've got no savings, Bianca." What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been preparing for this moment for months. The keys to my new house sat heavy in my pocket, pressed against my thigh like a secret weapon. The rest of the barbecue blurred into a haze of forced smiles and whispered commentary. I moved through it like a ghost, my mind already miles away, laying out the steps of what would come next. If he wanted me gone, I wouldn't just leave. I'd take everything they'd been leeching from me for years. By the time the last guests left, trailing awkward goodbyes in their wake, my decision was made. I wouldn't drag this out with arguments or tears. I'd be gone by morning, and with me would go the financial foundation they'd built their lives upon. Dawn hadn't yet broken when I loaded the final box into my car. My hands weren't shaking from grief, but from a strange electric anticipation. The house I'd grown up in sat silent behind me, unaware it was about to become the site of a long overdue reckoning. I drove through empty streets to my new home, a modest 2-story with white siding and a porch that wrapped around like a protective embrace. The air smelled different here, cleaner. By noon, I had the deed spread out on my kitchen counter, my name in black ink declaring this space mine and mine alone. I had been secretly saving for years while working as a paralegal, keeping a separate account they knew nothing about. I had been cutting expenses wherever I could to make this possible. I sent my father a text message, simple and direct. I've moved out. The bills are yours now. The response was immediate. My phone lighting up with his name, then Aaron's, then Flynn's in rapid succession. I let each call ring through to voicemail, a small satisfaction building with each unanswered ring. The sound of tires on gravel came before sunset. My father's truck, followed by Aaron's sedan, pulled into my driveway uninvited. I watched through the window as they emerged. My father's face pale with something I'd never seen before. Not anger, fear. I stepped onto my porch, arms crossed as they approached. My father stopped at the bottom step, shoulders rigid. "You're not serious," he said, voice lower than usual. I leaned against the railing, feeling the solid wood against my back. "I told you. You said pay rent or get out. I chose get out." I paused, letting the next words land with precision. "And now I'll stop paying your bills too." The color drained from his face completely. Aaron's mouth opened and closed without sound. Flynn hung back by the car, suddenly looking like the child he'd never outgrown being. In that moment, I understood the power I'd been giving away for years and the strange, intoxicating feeling of taking it back. After they drove away, I stood on my porch in the gathering dusk, breathing in air that finally felt like my own. Not relief, not yet. This was the first breath in years that didn't feel borrowed or owed. Inside, I opened my laptop and methodically severed every financial connection they'd used to drain me. Electric bill, removed from my account, gas, water, internet, car insurance. Each one cut like a cord that had been tethering me to their sinking ship. With each confirmation email, I felt my spine straighten incrementally. My phone lit up with their names in desperate rotation. I let each call go unanswered, watching as they transitioned from demands to pleas. By evening, the family group chat exploded. "Dad, this isn't funny." Aaron, "Bianca, the Wi-Fi is down." Dad, "You can't just shut things off." Aaron, "That's not how family works." Flynn, "Hope you're happy. You ruined dinner." I typed one response, "I've moved out. Bills are your responsibility now. Please don't show up uninvited." Their truck pulled up outside my house before the sun had set. This time, my father didn't wait at the steps. He marched up to my door, Erin trailing behind him with her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold, though the evening was warm. "All right, enough of this stunt," he said when I opened the door. "You made your point. Turn the accounts back on for a week while we transition." I met his gaze directly, something I'd trained myself not to do for years. "You've been taking half my paycheck since I was 17. You made it clear last night. You want me gone? I'm gone, and so is my money." Aaron let out a bitter laugh. "Wow, cold." "No," I said, stepping down to meet them on equal ground. "Cold is laughing at your child in front of neighbors. This is warm compared to that." My father's mouth opened, but for once, no words came out. I saw something flicker across his face, uncertainty, maybe even the first glimmer of understanding what he'd lost. I walked back up the porch steps. "You'll figure it out, just like I did." The door closed behind me with a definitive click, and for the first time in years, I was the one holding the key. Morning arrived with a silence I'd forgotten could exist. No stomping boots, no blaring television, no errands shouting about misplaced items. Just stillness and the gentle hiss of coffee brewing in my kitchen, steam curling into sunlight that streamed through windows that were mine alone. My momentary peace shattered when my phone lit up with a barrage of messages. "Unknown number. Call us. This is urgent. Dad, the electric's off. There's food spoiling. Aaron, we have to talk. If you care about this family, you'll fix this today." I set the phone down, refusing to let their chaos infiltrate the calm I'd created. They were learning what I'd known for years, that bills don't magically pay themselves. The knocking started at noon, 3 sharp raps that made my heart jump despite my resolve. Through the camera I'd installed, I saw Erin alone, designer sunglasses covering half her face. I opened the door just enough to form a barrier between us. "What do you want?" Her smile was brittle, practiced. "We need the car insurance in your name for just a few more days. Flynn's got an interview." "I already moved it to my address," I said, feeling nothing at the flash of panic across her features. It's my policy. If Flynn's driving, he needs his own. Her jaw tightened. You're punishing us. No, I said, leaning against the doorframe. I'm refusing to be punished anymore. She blinked rapidly, caught off guard by my calmness. Your father's furious. You know he's only like this because he's stressed. The shop closing... That shop closed 3 years ago, I interrupted. He's had 3 years to stop using me as his personal ATM. Her mask slipped for an instant, revealing the hardness beneath. You'll regret this. Sooner than you think. I closed the door without responding, the quiet click more satisfying than any shouted retort. That night, as I unpacked boxes in my new living room, my phone lit up with an email notification. Suspicious login attempt detected. My stomach tightened as I logged into my bank account to find multiple failed password attempts and something else. A department store credit card I'd never opened, registered in my name with their address. The pieces connected instantly. My purse had gone missing in their house a year ago, only to reappear days later with supposedly nothing taken. I printed every email, every statement, and slid them into a folder labeled Boundaries in bold black marker. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was building a case. At midnight, a text from Flynn. You think you're better than us now? Watch your mailbox. I stared at the screen, feeling the anger in my chest condense into something colder, harder, more focused. They weren't just losing my money. They were losing control. And the more they realized it, the uglier this would become. 2 days passed in unnatural quiet. No knocking, no calls, just occasional texts from Flynn, dripping with veiled threats. I kept my responses minimal, always in writing, preserving every word as my attorney had advised. I'd consulted with a lawyer at the firm where I worked as soon as I discovered the credit card fraud, showing him the evidence I'd gathered. On the third morning, as I sipped coffee at my kitchen counter, my phone erupted with notifications. Screenshots from friends and neighbors showed Facebook posts from Erin, written in her practiced victim tone. Some people think they can just turn their back on family. After all we've done, they leave us in the dark, literally. The comments offered predictable sympathy. Mutual friends, distant relatives I barely knew asking what happened. But most telling, not one mentioned me by name. They wanted to control the narrative without giving me a voice in it. I didn't engage. Instead, I called each utility company again, confirming every account had been transferred to their name. I wasn't leaving a single thread they could pull. My doorbell rang at noon. The camera showed my father alone, hands thrust deep in his jacket pockets despite the warm day. I opened the door but remained firmly in the threshold. What is it? His voice was unnaturally controlled, but tension vibrated beneath it. We've got a situation. The mortgage payment's due, and without your transfer... Not my problem, I said before he could finish. His eyes narrowed. Do you even hear yourself? You've been part of this household for years. You don't just walk away from responsibilities overnight. A laugh escaped me, sharp, genuine, and entirely without humor. You mean the responsibilities you dumped on me the second I started earning a paycheck? The ones you never asked about, just took... He stepped closer, invading my space in that way he'd always used to intimidate me. You think this new place makes you better than us? That you can hide here while we drown? I met his stare without blinking. I'm not hiding, Dad. I'm just done being your lifeline. His jaw worked like he was chewing on unsaid threats. Then he turned to leave, tossing one final barb over his shoulder. You're going to regret this when you come crawling back. I closed the door slowly, almost savoring the sound of the lock engaging. Crawling back wasn't in my vocabulary anymore. That evening, as dusk settled over my new neighborhood, their unraveling played out in real time. A former neighbor called, voice hushed with gossip. They're out in the driveway arguing, something about the bank account being overdrawn. Erin's screaming she can't buy groceries, and your dad keeps saying, it's your fault. I thanked them and hung up, sitting in the stillness that followed. They were feeling it now. The weight I'd carried alone for years, suddenly pressing down on them. The next day, I made it clear this wasn't just about leaving. It was about reclaiming every piece of myself they'd stolen. At the bank, I met with a manager and closed the last joint account they still had access to. The folder of evidence in my bag grew thicker, more complete. That evening, a text from Erin. "You've made your point. We get it. Just please help us this month. We'll figure it out after." I didn't reply. 2 hours later, she posted publicly. "Funny how people change when they think they don't need you anymore, but life has a way of humbling everyone." For once, she was right. Life does have a way of humbling everyone, and theirs was just beginning. Saturday morning brought the perfect opportunity. As I scrolled through emails, one from the mortgage company caught my eye. Urgent, past due balance and notice of public auction. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I'd removed my name from everything connected to that house weeks ago, but opening it, I realized the bank still had me listed as an emergency contact from years before. My father had added me to the mortgage contact list while I was handling the paperwork during his recovery from surgery. The letter was unambiguous. 2 payments missed, no arrangement made, auction date set in 30 days. I stared at the screen, watching the cursor blink. Once I would have rushed to save them, draining my savings again to rescue them from consequences. Now I hit print and added the paper to my boundaries folder. The pounding at my door came at noon. All 3 stood on my porch. My father red-faced, Erin tight-lipped, Flynn smirking like he was about to win a game only he understood. I stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind me. My father didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You saw the notice. We can't lose the house, Bianca. You're going to help fix this." I folded my arms. "No, I'm not." "You're still family," he shouted, loud enough for neighbors across the street to turn and stare. I didn't lower my voice. Family doesn't use you as a wallet. Family doesn't laugh while you're humiliated in front of half the neighborhood. Family doesn't commit fraud in your name and expect you to just take it. Erin stepped forward, eyes darting nervously to the people watching. "Do you have to make a scene?" "Yes," I said flatly, "because you had no problem making one when it suited you." Flynn muttered under his breath, "Unbelievable." I turned to him. "You're right. It is unbelievable that I let this go on for as long as I did." My father's voice dropped to that quiet, dangerous tone that once made me shrink. "If you walk away from this, you'll be nothing to us." I smiled, feeling nothing but a strange lightness. "Then I'll be nothing to you and everything to myself." I stepped back toward my door, but before going inside, I pulled the printed foreclosure notice from my folder and held it up for them to see. "This," I said, my voice cutting through the tension between us, "is what happens when the person you've been draining finally stops bleeding for you." I let the paper fall to the porch at their feet. The door closed behind me with a solid, satisfying click. Through the blinds, I watched them stand frozen. My father staring at the fallen notice, Erin glancing anxiously at the neighbors, Flynn kicking at the paper as if it might bite him. They left without another word. That evening, I posted a single line on my social media. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the chance to stand on their own 2 feet. The supportive comments accumulated throughout the night. People congratulating me on my new place, sending messages of encouragement, asking if I'd finally moved out. Not once did I mention them by name. I didn't need to, because the truth was simple. Their downfall wasn't my story to tell anymore. It was theirs to live, and I was finally free to live mine. 3 months later, I received the final notice that the credit fraud case against them had been settled. The department store card had been removed from my credit report, and my father and Erin had been ordered to pay restitution. They never contacted me again after that day on my porch, and I heard through mutual friends that they had to sell most of their possessions and move to a small apartment across town. Flynn eventually got his own place, apparently having learned the hard way that standing on his own feet was the only option left. As for me, I'm thriving in my new home, debt-free, and starting law school next fall. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do to others, it's what you do for yourself. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, 0 cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.